When was the last time you truly felt free? Free to express yourself, to explore, to simply be, without feeling guilty or thinking about what you should be doing? If that's a hard question to answer, you're not alone. And that's what this Living Leisurely series is going to be about, reclaiming leisure. This idea of leisure is one that we don't often talk directly about, but that we all require as part of a meaningful and fulfilling standard of living. The goal of this series or video series, if you're watching this on YouTube, is to develop an understanding of leisure's personal importance, how we can embrace it and make it practical, as well as its broader societal significance. And in today's episode, we're going to introduce the topic of leisure, talk a little about the current challenges it faces, and set the stage for future episodes. But first, let me briefly introduce myself. My name is Jesse Bourgeois. I've worked in the Canadian recreation industry for approaching 7 years now, as well as going on a decade as a personal trainer and practicing kinesiologist working in the fitness industry. After completing my university education, I returned to small town British Columbia, where I live with my wife, almost 1-year-old son, and our dog and 2 cats. And to avoid boring you with my life story, the most relevant aspect to this podcast and discussion is that over the past decade, I've struggled in the blurred lines between work and leisure, falling into the trap of trying to make hobbies and leisure activities become economically productive, which may not be overly surprising given the current societal and economic pressures we face today. Establishing a personal brand and monetizing oneself isn't an uncommon practice. But now that I'm a parent and I'm approaching turning 30, I'm eager to reestablish a healthy relationship with leisure to benefit not only myself, but my family unit, and perhaps through this series, some of you as well. But what exactly is leisure? And is personal brands and monetizing hobbies really a problem, or is that an unsubstantiated assumption? I mean, if we can make some rainy day money off of things we already enjoy doing, why not? Isn't the ultimate goal, the dream of our day and age, to find a way where all of our money comes from doing something we would otherwise just do for fun? Wouldn't it be great if our leisurely activities supported our finances? To better understand the possible answers to these questions, we need to look at necessity and obligation compared to free self-expression. In future episodes, we're going to look deeper at the history of leisure and how it impacts our perspective today. But one point for today is that throughout history, the contrast between work and leisure has been one way each has been defined. They require one another in order to have temporal and physical boundaries. Leisure has often been seen as freedom from the necessity of labor, or freedom from the obligations required to meet the base standard of living. This is a bit vague though, especially when we get into the idea of what's been termed productive hobbies, such as turning hobbies into businesses, or even things like fitness challenges that can come to feel like an obligation. In more recent times, this has also evolved into the topic of the serious leisure perspective, which we will talk about in greater detail in the future. But this highlights 2 key points to consider. The first is that an activity could be leisure for one person and work for another. If the person feels like they need the activity to earn money in order to meet their economic needs, the activity has become a necessity, be it potentially a psychological necessity. It's hard to determine exactly when objective economic needs ends and a psychological desire for more economic means to achieve a particular standard of living begins. Arguments could be made around how much money a person actually needs to live comfortably, but ultimately, if someone feels they need a certain amount, their actions become a part of that psychological necessity, even if it seems unreasonable to somebody else. Which brings us to our second point. Leisure is liquid. It's a state of being. If that person comes to a realization they don't need that money, or they don't need to do a particular activity out of obligation like a fitness challenge, then the reason why they might continue to do the activity changes. They might continue out of delight, passion, a way to express their inner authenticity, and now it enters into the realm of leisure, outside of necessity and obligation. Leisure is a state of being, a state of mind. that is accompanied with meaningful engagement with one's life. This idea and definition of leisure can seem a bit abstract or confusing. It's almost like we're too close to it, standing 3 inches in front of the painting, unable to focus our eyes. In coming episodes, as we visit leisure through history, each episode will move us a little further back, expanding our understanding, taking in more of the picture until we reach a point where we can see it clearly, where we understand the difference between passive escapism into binge watching shows and social media consumption compared to watching a film as a way to participate in the leisure consumption of art. My hope for this episode is that you're starting to see that leisure isn't just time outside of work, that it does have something to do with time away from work, but it also has to do with well-being, creativity, self-discovery, and is a state of being rather than just specific activities. And we face a critical problem today in regard to leisure. That question at the top of the episode of when you last felt truly free to simply be without external expectations or obligations is becoming a harder question to answer as life becomes busier. And not only that, but busyness has become a type of status symbol or virtue. The person who works, side hustles, wakes up at 4 a.m., ice baths, works out, runs 5 miles while listening to audiobooks on double speed, and has luxurious material things to show off all this hard work is glorified. We often equate busyness and work with success as a human being. And it's become easier for work and passive escapism to creep into our lives. Social media at the touch of a button, work emails and remote work lingering in our periphery as we go about our day. Endless YouTube and social media channels promoting courses and strategies to monetize hobbies. And not because these courses or creators are the root of the problem, but simply a symptom of it. Some people are having a hard time achieving the base standard of living and legitimately feel the necessity to find a way to earn more money. And at least if it's something you like doing, that's a win compared to work you don't enjoy. The problem being when we progressively remove the intrinsic value from all of our activities. Meaning and fulfillment can slowly drift from our grasp. And an interesting question arises. If we choose busyness and as a society nudge ourselves into feeling a psychological necessity to earn more money, consume more things, what does that say about what we value as a society? What does it say about what our ethics are, our vision of a good life? Leisure is a reflection of who we are, what our values and priorities are as individuals and as a society. And I don't want to paint too bleak of a picture here because there's a lot we can do. Through understanding leisure, we can reclaim it. There are big and little things we can do to discover a more fulfilling and balanced life for ourselves, for our children, as individuals, as family units, as friend groups, and as communities. And through reclaiming our leisure and through using leisure itself as a lens to explore some of life's big questions and society's struggles, we can expand our understanding and improve our quality of life. If that sounds like a journey you're interested in exploring and joining me on, I'm so grateful to have you here. And I hope you'll continue to join me in future episodes. The goal is to put out an episode approximately once per week, but at times it might be more like every other week as I develop a sustainable research and writing schedule. But in summary, today we talked about how leisure is not just the absence of work, but rather is a state of being, essential for personal and societal well-being. How leisure itself can be a lens to understand an individual and a culture and its values and priorities, and how modern life complicates leisure, but makes it more crucial than ever. Next time, we begin our historical exploration of leisure to help us see the whole picture of what leisure is and why it's essential for a good, meaningful life. Before we wrap up, if this type of thing resonates with you, you might be interested in our free online book club. You can visit www.jessebourgeois.ca to learn more. This year, the book club is reading books centered around the question, what makes for a good life? It will have quite a bit of overlap and connection to the conversations we have here on this series. And you might be interested in our other YouTube episodes that expand on ideas presented in the books we are reading. Thanks for listening. Talk with you next time.